All right, welcome everyone to First Team Weekly Wednesday training, Zoom trainings. We appreciate you being part of First Team and part of today. We have a special panel here of the top agents, and Terry Karges is going to be a moderator here. It's a top farm panel, and Terry, you're on.
All right, good morning, everybody. Really excited to do this panel. The group that we have together for you guys today, last year combined at about 100 million in sales, and these are the best of the best when it comes to farming, traditional farming, and we've compiled a bunch of questions here because we have so many great resources here at the company, but one of the things we find over and over is that you really always want to hear from the top agents and what are they doing. So we're going to go through kind of a list of questions, and they've volunteered to kind of share everything with you guys. So we're really fortunate to have this opportunity. We got a lot of questions, so want to thank Greg and Dan Sarnicki and Lynn for helping to put this together, and definitely want to give a big shout out to Bob Gattuso and Mark Kojak and Fred Nassau, because we have so many great resources helping with farming right now in this great month. So if you're not taking advantage of all the company resources, you really need to focus, because you just can't find any greater support. So with that, let's open up kind of the first thing I want to ask you guys, and I'm going to kind of just throw this out there to whoever wants to go, is the term farming does get thrown around a lot. And I wanted to hear from you guys, what does it really mean to farm? I think some people think they get in the business, they pick a farm, and now they're farmers. So we all kind of know that's not really how it works. So can you guys share a little bit about that?
Kathy, Mary, or Terry, ladies first.
So easy for you, Steve.
So farming for me is, we have a designated set of homes that we try to just continually connect with, through, so-called farming efforts. We've also had over the years, like when our kids were at Servite and Rosary, we used those people too as its own farm together, sponsoring events and being at all of the the functions and just being present for, those people, letting them know, what we do and, giving them pertinent information.
So some demographic and geographic different sets of areas that you've focused on over the years.
Correct.
Okay, good. Anybody else, or does everybody kind of agree with that?
I think so. The only other thing that I would say to farming is it kind of goes back to the real meaning of farming. Like, you're cultivating those people. Like, so you have your plan, there's a certain group. However, I think the misconception of farming is that it has to be a certain area. And it doesn't. It can have so many categories, but all you're doing is constantly cultivating the people in there, because usually most of those people are your biggest fans, they're your support group, it's the area or the people that you have the most knowledge about as well. So that's the only thing that I'd add to what you said, Terry.
So would you guys say it's fair to say that with all of that, you're focusing on building relationships within, whether it's a demographic or a geographic region?
100%.
Absolutely.
Very good. How long have you guys been farming? Just real quickly, you can just throw out the years roughly.
35 years.
Oh.
I know that sounds like 135 years to some of you, but it's only 35 years.
6 years.
6 years.
22.
22.
Come on, Eric.
4.
All right.
Ever since I've been in it, but that's kind of a weird question, because she's been doing it longer for me.
Yes.
Okay. So how long did it take before you guys started to see results? Like, so you start farming. I think, again, there's another thing there where people who want to get started in farming kind of expect they're going to get deals right out of the gates. How does that work? Timing wise, how do you build up and how long did it take for you guys before you actually were selling homes in your farm?
Immediately. I think it was day 2 when I was knocking and in a territory I decided I wanted to manage. And gal came to, I thought it was the daughter, came to the door, and I'm like, are your mom and dad home? She goes, I am a mom. I am the mom. And she had 5 kids. And then her husband came, and I ended up selling their property in Yorba Linda, selling them a property in Anaheim Hills, selling another one. And that was on day 2 of being intentional about managing a territory.
Wonderful. Very good. Anybody else?
It took me about 4 months, but of constantly being in that community and doing open houses even during the week. And after 4 months, I got my first listing in there.
Very good.
My mom ran away, but I'll answer for her.
Sure.
I know hers was longer. I know it was at least over a year or so before she was doing it consistently before she actually took her first listing in the farm.
Okay, well, good. So I like this. So we've got kind of a whole wide variety. So like with Steve, getting out there and just getting right to it, you can have some real good stuff happen right out of the gates, right? So getting out face to face and all of that. And for some of us, it may take longer. And Kathy and Eric are dominant farmers in their farm, but it took a little longer.
Terry, I'm wondering if Steve recalls the dialogue that took place on that first to get the immediate results.
Good morning, Dan.
Good morning.
Yeah, so that's funny you asked that, because I take my kids into this neighborhood where I started, and the first door I went to knock on had a lockbox, the old mechanical lockbox. The second one had a dog that was just, it was like Cujo attacking the door. And the third one said they were listed. That was my first day. I was like deflated, my first 3 doors. So the next day I went and I'm just like, hey, I'm Steve Vartanian. I'm a realtor. Have you guys thought about selling? And that was it. I was new. There were dominant players in the marketplace. And I don't want to put anybody on the phone on the spot, but you might remember, like, there were other companies and there were these ladies that dominated Yorba Linda. And you stepped into their farm, you got a phone call, and they were the competition, and they would school you. And they used to call me kid all the time. And then I got to know them and love them, and we did a lot of transactions together. But part of what I wanted to say in there, when I started, there was this idea of protected farms. So when I got that first listing, there was an agent from another company who said, that's my farm. You can't have a listing in there. And I'm like, well, I'm licensed for the whole state. And companies that, not our company, but other companies had this idea of protected farms. So it was hard to break in, because if you did get a listing, they would make you put somebody else's name right or on the sign. Right. So it was really tough back then to break into areas. But the dialogue was simple, Dan. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
And I wanted to, I need to clarify too, and thank you, Dan, because I'd hoped Dan would kind of co-host this with me, because again, he's been just an amazing farmer himself. For those of you who don't know, he was kind of the record setter in Mission Viejo for many, many years. And so I always respect having him partner up with this. So thanks for doing that, Dan. Please chime in at will. Kathy, since you had a little bit of a longer run, is there anything with hindsight that you could share with the group that you think may have helped expedite connecting with people quicker or getting a deal quicker? Anything to ramp up results faster that you kind of looking back?
A funny story I always tell my kids, and I just recently did because we just went through Super Bowl Sunday. I started farming on Super Bowl Sunday in 2009. Somebody told me that it was some brilliant idea because everybody was home at a party, and I had just moved to my neighborhood, and I figured, okay, I'm just going to be the fart that take over my neighborhood. I was so naive to think. And I knocked on every single home, 209 homes in my community, and I knocked on all of them, and people invited me into their party. People told me to get the hell out of town. What was I doing there on that day? And I didn't even know what I was doing. So I think if I could go back, the biggest thing that I would tell myself is focus, Kath, just focus. because there's so many ideas. It's kind of like, there's an incredible menu of ideas. And it takes, I don't know, I had to answer a call, so I missed the very beginning, but the answer to your question is it took me 2 full years before anything literally happened in this neighborhood that I started. And a lot of it was because I just kept bouncing around doing 8 million different things that if I would have just focused and stayed with the same, something that worked all the time, I think it could have been a little bit easier. I think it could have started sooner. And I've learned from my mistakes, and now I'm very, very consistent in what I do.
Excellent. And so when it came to picking your farms, a lot of agents pick kind of where they live or maybe a neighborhood they like. And a lot of times they don't even talk to their manager, and they just kind of, I've got a farm. How did you guys come about picking your farm? Was there research involved? Was it where you lived, or how did that happen? And to add to that, any advice for agents when they're looking to pick their farm?
For me, with the farm, coming in new, and there was a lot of established agents that very much stake their territory, and you can't farm here and you can't farm there. I went into a neighborhood that was brand new. And my manager at the time, Jim Urbacci, said, you're not going to get a lot of traction there for a couple of years, but new, farms, you don't have any competition. So I went into a new housing development, and as they moved in, the territory grew, and it's, 22 years later.
Very good. Kath, you live in your farm, right?
I do. I was just naive. I knew nothing when I started. I moved in here and I figured, oh, they'll all like me. And I had 3 really big agents in here, and I never, my intent was never to step on them. It was just, I remember saying to my kids when I first started farming in here, I'm going to wave to every single person in this community and say hi constantly. And someday they're going to know who I am. And it's kind of funny because we were walking the dog the other night with my husband, and I were walking through the neighborhood, and somebody who I didn't really know had this beautiful dog. We were talking to her about the dog, and Tom introduced himself. He said, hi, I'm Tom. She told us her name, and I went to say my name, and she said, oh, I know you. It was funny. It just, and then my farms just kept growing. I started out, the one thing to answer your question, I started out with a farm in North Tustin because I liked Peters Canyon. I was a runner, and I used to run Peters Canyon, and I loved that area. So I just started to learn that area as I went along. I think for different reasons, people, I don't think there's a wrong reason to start a farm other than what I realized afterwards. And I'm sure Dan and Terry know this better than I do. I probably should have sat with somebody, but it's good to know what the turnover rates are in some certain areas. Like you're starting out with some more knowledge if you do that. And I did not do that.
Yeah, and Bob Gattuso is always real good on that too, because these are businesses, right? And this is your business that you're going to sink many years, a lot of money into. So it is important, I think, to meet with your manager, meet with your Western Resources title rep, and make sure you understand the analytics, all of the everything behind it, before you go head on into opening that business, right? So, Eric, I'm sorry, were you going to comment?
I was going to say, I think one of the bigger things too is going somewhere that you have experience or kind of know about. I mean, our 2 farms are where my mom currently lives and where I grew up. So it's a lot easier when we're at doors or talking to people to kind of just like, you have understanding of the area, things, you can talk about it. People are nicer when you can kind of say, I grew up here, or I know more about it, that type of stuff. And even when you're selling houses in it, you're more knowledgeable.
Right. And there's so many other benefits. I mean, you think of just little things like Nextdoor and those things that you actually have access directly to, that inside information that you may not if you're living further outside, right? So a lot of benefits for those who want to farm in their current neighborhood.
I think too, before I answer how I picked it, I forgot to say something. I wanted to say that I I'm really thankful for my partner, Terry Short. We've been partners, it'll be 31 years this year. And she's fantastic, artistic, her marketing. All my clients like me, all my clients love her. So I'll just put it that way. I'm also would tell every agent on the phone, you have great resources. We have tremendous management team, whether it's a regional manager like Terry or Dan, or, you know, my manager, Steve, is amazing. We have, you know, we have an awesome OA. I have awesome TC. That's Kristen and Christine, and our title reps like Jared and our escrow team. I call it Hallmark, but Coast Cities. They're great resources for all of this. You're not alone. So when I started and I picked my first one, I just drove to where I stopped. And I got out of the car, and that first day, the first 3 houses I told you, the next day I said, I can't be defeated. I went back. Now I'm a little more sophisticated, maybe not as much as Kathy or Mary and Terry, or Kathy and Eric and Mary and Terry, but I'm territory managed where I live. But I have to tell you, 25 years ago, when I moved in my neighborhood, I did not market in my neighborhood. I wanted to come home. I didn't want to be bothered. I wanted to relax, have my time off. It was before I was married, before I had kids. I was single. I didn't want people saying, hey, he's not working today. But then there were 2 agents that dominated, and they were treating them, they were suppressing the values. You have to think 25 years ago, we didn't have everything on our phones. And so I was intentional putting values out, like what did they list, you know, what did they sell for, and communicating what values were. And that really helped. So I think that helps today. If you can bring value to the door or to the customer, then that helps them. And that's what helped me in where I live now, where I get my fair share of listings. And then the other thing I think is have the proper expectation. Don't expect to go in like when I started. Don't pick a farm to say, I'm going to go in and dominate. Kathy said, I didn't go in there to step on any toes, right? Don't wage a war. We're realtors. If somebody takes a listing in the area you're working, call them up and say, congratulations, anything I do to help you, right? Be their best support, because you might bring a buyer to that listing. You know, don't be adversarial. And so many people in our business, they go to war against other, you know, agent to agent. So sorry for the long answer, but I do believe if you know your area, where you live, and you love it, you should do it to help lift values, if not only for yourself, but for your neighbors, and then do other areas where you don't live.
Wonderful. That's really good insight too, Steve, especially about how you wanted your privacy. And I think there are a lot of benefits to farming your own neighborhood, but there may be some other considerations for people to make sure they're thinking about. So again, please meet with your managers. As Steve said, they're a great resource to help you figure out where to farm. Just kind of quickly, how many homes in your farms are you currently, or how many homes are in each of your farms?
One of our farms has 209 homes and the other one has 420.
Okay. Mary,
We have about 3,500 homes in our farm.
3,500 homes. Okay. And
Too
Steve?
many.
Oh, go ahead, Mary, finish.
No, I said we have 35 homes, and Terry said a little bit too many.
Got it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because we have 2,201, but that's all of where I live. And then we have 200 in a specific part of it, 200 in another one, and 75 in another one. But I don't want to just give you the analytics. The reason behind it is we work multi price points. So I always tell my friends who ask me advice in real estate, be 4-dimensional. Don't just have everything in luxury. Don't just have everything, you know, in the middle or the starter. Be diversified, because when the market shifts, you don't know what segment is going to be successful. And you can also move people up or down, right sizing in these different price points. And that's where you really do better, is when your client turns into 2 or 3 transactions for you.
Excellent. Well, and based on these different sizes too, and then we'll go to Dan. I just have one kind of quick follow-up question. We've seen turnover rates go down in these farms, right? Where we normally would hear farms are much smaller in size, right? Like 500 or whatever the number would be, a number that you could get to meet everybody manageably and be there on a consistent basis. Some of you have expanded your farms to larger farms. Have you found there's a sweet spot that you can manage, that you can actually still get to offset that lower turnover rate? As far as how many homes in your farm? Do you feel you have too many right now? Do you feel that it's just right?
Yeah,
Anybody feel
it's hard. The bigger the number, it depends on your team. Okay, so if you have 8 people on your team, you can get to more doors, more contacts, right? But so for me, in the amount of time I want to put into it, I have it down to a simple number every day, Monday through Friday, that I've got to get to the doors. So yes, the number for me can be too much because I probably don't get to every door as much as I want, but that's active territory management. There's passive territory management. That's the mailers, paying somebody to just drop at the door. So I think that helps you too, because, you know, Terry and Mary, if they did whatever they did this last year, you know, 50 million, 60 million, they may not be able to get to every door. I'm not speaking for them. Or Kathy doing what the one was it last year when you were #1, Kathy? It's not you and Eric that maybe you can't get to every door, but you have active and passive. So the answer is, I think the sweet spot is what you can, I would say that you can do where you could get to 50, you visualize it, you could get to 50 doors a day, the amount of days that you would door knock, and then multiply that out.
And that's your target each day, Steve?
Yeah, so again, I do kind of 4-dimensional. I should have started off, I do like guerrilla marketing. I learned it a long time ago from Joe Stump, if you remember Joe Stump, and he was a trainer. And so we have the traditional door knocking around a sold sign, a list just listed. And then every day minimum, I try to go to 5 right after lunch. 5 warm leads right after lunch, handwritten notes. And then we have our mailers. So, but 50 a day, if I could do 50 a day, that's my perfect sweet spot. And then I'm done.
Excellent. Okay, and Dan, I know you had a follow-up question.
Yeah, just continuing on with the range of homes that they have in their farms from 400 or 500, Eric, and to 2,600 to some of the other panelists. You know, I just wanted their opinions about, there's a couple different logics regarding, should I have a smaller farm and try to get a higher percentage of market share, or having a larger farm and maybe that percentage is spread out and I have less market share. And then I'm just kind of curious, I think Steve mentioned about team, you know, how many people are on your team that manage those numbers in the farms?
They're good questions. The other farm that I think we just didn't talk about, and I know we will, it goes with what you're saying, Dan, is your past clients farm. That's a farm too. And what, like, so much comes from them. And that's when you're talking about when times are tough, you've got people in all different areas. When you're old like me, your people have kids and you're helping, like, you keep helping forever. So that answer, I like it to be manageable. I'm really clear on the reason, and it may not be everybody's reason, but I'm really clear on the reason that I do the business. Like, that communication and that group of the feeling for people is really important to me. I'm probably not a very good businesswoman when it comes to all of that, but that's not how I do it. So I would say I love the size of my farms. I know both communities really well. I can handle them. I'm really competitive, so dominance is important to me. So even if I'm dominating a little pond, I like that better than swimming in an ocean with the sharks.
No, well, sometimes you can get more market share and higher percentage, keep your overhead down a little bit too. You know?
To also answer your question, for us, essentially doing the territory marketing and the management, it's just myself and my mom that do it. It's kind of important to us that we're always the ones that people see. It's no one else that's coming from us. Our names on the back of the flyers, our names are on the signs. You're the ones that we're going to meet when we're going through the farm. Also, though, I mean, with it being a smaller farm, whenever someone else takes a listing in our farm, it's kind of more annoying for us. I mean, I think we if anyone ever takes a listing in one of our farms, I think we're on the phone for hours on end about how angry we are about that, what we can do differently, and how often we need to get back out there because what
But
did we
wait,
do
Eric,
wrong?
wait, Eric, then we call them and we're wonderful to them. We help
Yeah,
them
we're
yesterday.
nice to them, but we're
just yell
freaking
at
out
each
behind the
other.
scenes about why that happened and what we did wrong. That we believe that we should have 100% market share of our farms.
Right.
Love it.
Very cool.
So, how important is being the local expert, knowing all your stats, knowing your community? Can you talk about that as far as your market goes, what your routines each day, and the importance of just completely knowing everything you need to know to be a true specialist?
I think it is important for you to be very knowledgeable about the communities that you're working in, especially, you know, your local farms, because they're counting on you for this knowledge. And I know Terry and I have open houses in the areas where we do farm, and we get a lot of neighbors coming in saying, you know, I'm so glad you listed for this, and, you know, what did this one sell for, and all that. So every day we check what's on the market, and like Kathy and Eric, why didn't we get this? And you know, it's important to stay on top of it and to make sure that you are knowledgeable and know the different floor plans and, you know, why this one sold for this much, and, you know, and something else sold for less. So it's very important.
So pricing, you've got to know the models of each of the homes,
The
right?
condition also.
Yeah. What are you doing each morning? Like you mentioned, Mary, just checking the sales and all that. Anybody want to share a routine that you do first thing in the morning to make sure that you know that information before you get the day started? Hot sheets or whatever you might be doing?
I just go on the MLS on my app. I log in and I look at the cities I like to work, how many are coming soon, how many active, and that's all I work off of. And so I know, let's say Yorba Linda, I didn't look this morning, but usually every morning that's the first thing I do. I will say knowledge is really important. You know, in the movie, one of the movies, it said knowledge is good, you know, but knowledge is not the most important thing. I think you got to go out there and make the personal contact. And when Mary was talking about when they do an open house, that's now a personal contact. So you're using your knowledge with that personal contact. Knowledge of its own itself has no value, because the customer, I had a good friend in our coffee clutch say yesterday that Steve Osborne runs, their client kept going to Zillow for the knowledge, right, for the information. And the agent was saying, stop looking there because you're looking at old information. I have the latest. I'm sending you and emailing you the latest straight out of the MLS or Real Scout, whatever. So I think the personal contact is so important. But in the morning is looking at what's the inventory and then go from there. That's for me. I just keep it simple for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I think knowing the inventory, knowing what's out there. I also kind of think, I think the personal contact is definitely important. I also think that having the knowledge makes the personal contact easier. When you're talking to people, if you know what you're talking about, if you know the listings, if you know all that stuff, it makes the conversation a lot better. It makes you able to kind of speak and seem as though you're adding value.
It
Excellent,
kind of goes beyond that a little bit too. It's like the people in the communities that you work, and it's easier for us because we're small, right? The smaller communities make it a little bit easier. Like people aren't afraid to stop me in the street to ask me who's the best window cleaner, or you know, can you give us the vendor and who did this in this area. I think knowing even what's going on next door is a good thing. Like what's going on in the area. If you work small areas, just because people can tell that you're like, people come to me asking me when's the pool gonna open, like what do you know from that? And I don't know, I just think, and even other agents, I can't tell you how many other agents call me to ask me what's coming up, like they expect me to know. And I just think that all works together in your favor of being the area expert. Like when another agent calls you because they think you're the agent, the expert in an area, you think to yourself, "Ooh, I did something right here."
I love it. Well, and we always have that line that they need to know you, like you, and trust you. And I think everything you guys are saying kind of folds into that very nicely. So, question for you guys about
Terry, can I follow
Yeah.
up with that?
Sure.
If there are newer agents, I saw some questions flash really quick about, how to establish a farm or pick. Talk to your manager, talk to your support team, your title rep, whomever, but just go, right? If there's Kathy and Eric and Mary and Terry dominating a farm, that's probably where you don't want to spend all your resources right now. Go somewhere and don't worry about the knowledge. Go and say, hey, did you see that one that listed down the street? That's all you have to say, and did you see God, isn't that great? They sold that one for 1.2 million and it's the highest sale. Have you thought about selling? It can be that simple, because I think if you overwhelm yourself, you won't get out of the car and go to the door or go into a farm and put out flyers or do an open house. So that's just my 2 cents.
Excellent. And I know Dan had a follow-up.
Yeah, there's so many aspects to farming. You guys are mentioning the personal contact, which is, prospecting. There's a social aspect. There's the marketing aspect. How would you describe your style? Are you a social farmer, a marketer, a prospector, or all of the above? I'd love to hear from everyone on that, please.
I think that's a great question. And my best answer is going to be that you have to do what you're the most comfortable with. And that's where you go with the focusing. I tried to do it the way everybody else does it, but you've got to be who you are. Like Steve, I know you are a great door knocker. I know that. And I know that door knocking is a great thing, but I absolutely positively hate when someone knocks on my door. I hate it. So I never do it. And I tried, but I never do it. I also don't like, this is going to make me sound awful, but I don't like socializing with people. I have a lot of children. I have a big family, and my socializing is all with my family. So I don't do that either. I just am very involved with people when I'm involved with them. Like, it's always me you're going to see. I have my hands on it. Getting the best for you is the most important thing. And that's what works for me. So I can't say, like, Mary and Terry might have a different personality than Eric and I and Steve and all of you out there. So use your personality, whatever you're comfortable with. Like, I used to coach all kinds of basketball, softball teams. So I love that. But then I came home and didn't have anything to do with it again. I hated the parties. I think you've got to be who you are. And if you're genuine and you're consistent, it works no matter what you do.
Excellent.
I think also the biggest thing with it is whatever you do, make sure you're consistent with it. I mean, we're not knocking on people's doors all the time, but people are getting our flyers in the mail. People are getting things on their doorstep. People are seeing us around. Like, whatever you do, make sure you do it often and people know you for that.
And if I could, Terry and Mary, I think you guys kind of work together in some different ways a little bit, right? Terry, we were talking about the other day. I think, Mary, you're more in the farm physically. Is that correct? A little bit. Can you guys share about maybe the dynamics there?
So, when you get busy, the farming is the first thing to go by the wayside. I think Mary is a lot more consistent at it than I am. I don't ever want to knock on anyone's door. I don't want somebody knocking on my door, so I'm not comfortable knocking on someone's door, but I can walk a million miles if I have to. I'll be at every open house. I think people know us because they come into our open houses, or when we're walking by, they're like, oh yeah, we know you. But I'm not good at knocking on someone's door, where Mary, she'll do whatever she needs to do.
But I think also door knocking to me is different now than it was before COVID. I think before COVID, people were more welcoming when you go to their door. And now it's like, why are you bothering? So door knocking for me is not consistent. I'm like Terry, we walk a lot, we drop personally. We don't pay somebody to be in our farm dropping. So and you do meet people that way, and they do come out and say hi, like Terry said, oh, I know you, I'm happy that you got this listing, and so that's more for us. And then with social media, I'm like Kathy, you got to do something that you feel comfortable with, and that's eventually what's going to work for you. Social media and I are just not friends.
Steve, are you seeing the same thing at the door? Because since you're out there every day, are you seeing the same sentiment?
Well, I got to tell you, I don't know Eric, and I'm sure he's fantastic. But if Kathy came to my door, I'd be scared because she bottom lines it. She'd probably move me in like 3 minutes. So, no, I
Have you
love
enlisted
Kathy.
in 3 minutes?
It'd be like you're moving. It'd be like that scene out of that movie, Bugsy or whatever. Yeah, I just get warm receptions. I get invited in. One of my favorite stories is Mrs. Valenzuela, who invited me in, and she's showing me her kitchen, and she stopped and she had this panic look on her face. And I said, what's the matter? She goes, I don't know you, and they say you shouldn't invite strangers in your house. I said, well, there's my picture on the flyer. And here, I'm going to call my mom right now. And I called my mom, and I'm like, Mom, could you vouch for me? And so Mrs. Valenzuela talked to my mom, Evelyn Vartanian, and we ended up selling multiple properties from Mrs. Valenzuela. So, but to Kathy's point, and is that there's difference in territory management. There's the social part, I coach and I volunteer. So there's that part of territory management, the people you interact with. There's going to the doors that might be, and then there's going to warm or hot leads. So we have a buyer right now for 1.25 million. I'm going to every neighborhood where I know somebody's told me they're thinking about selling. So that's a hot lead. I'm going to that door for the purpose. And I think if you go with a simple why you're there, it's easier. When I started, they give you, hi, I'm Steve, and I'd like to do a real estate survey. Would you take my survey? That was the script, right? When I did that, I couldn't even do that. I just went, hey, I'm Steve. Have you thought about selling? I just kept it simple. But to their point, it's not all about knocking on doors. It's being 4D, having different ways that you can get business, personal interaction, social. And I'm like Kathy, in the sense that when I come home, it's all about family time for me. So
Right.
I love my family time. So when I do go out to do something, I'm purposeful. I want to get in, do my job, and I want to get home to my fantastic wife and my 2 wild monkey boys. So
I love that. And I kind of hear a theme there with many of you about that, right? And so you mentioned territory management, and our wonderful manager, Fred Nassab, created a program that hopefully, if you have not seen it in first place, go download it today, or maybe Greg can even post it here in the loop with this recording, the territory management full-blown package for farming. Do you guys—
Can I jump on that? Terry, can I jump on Fred really quick?
Sure.
So when my partner Terry Short and I were joining First Team, it was July 2009 when we joined. So in June 2009, we were leaving a company and coming to First Team. We were interviewing. So when we joined, we went down to meet Fred Nassab, and the First Team office was by South Coast Plaza across the freeway. So we sit down to meet with him, the fire alarms go off. So everybody has to evacuate the building. I'm like, well, this is a prodigious start. So we end up at Starbucks. And he goes, it took so much time to get over here to Starbucks. Here's what I would do territory management. I'm like, say that again. And I kind of was already doing it, but he said, and I'll never forget it, pick a home in your area that's been on the market a long time and go preview it. So Terry and I went, there was a home we wanted to preview. The lady and the husband had all the lights on for us. They had candles burning, they baked cookies. We were the only agent they had seen in 6 months, right? So that market was a tough market, 2009 market. And it expired, and then they called us, right? That was territory management right there. And I always credit Fred for that. Whenever I see him, I always thank him for that.
Nice. Well, so each year, do you guys do a formal business plan specific to farming that includes like your goals, your budget, your ROI, and all of, like, block out your days. Anybody doing like a detailed planner? What are you doing to make sure you're ready for the new year?
We don't do as much as what you just said, but we do. I mean, we have a full sheet of like when we mail things out pretty consistently. So we have a full Excel kind of when we're going to mail things out, how often, when they're coming, when we're going to be dropping things at people's doors, when they're going to be in their mail, all that type of stuff.
Very good. Anybody else?
We just tend to mail once, sometimes twice a month, and then dropping, you know, when we can squeeze it in our day, or when marketing double ships us something and it's needs to get out, and it's, you know, we bag it, and, you know, we hit with, you know, notepads a couple times a year, but no real formal plan. I mean, we used to do big events, you know, ice cream truck, Taco Tuesday, pancakes with Santa. And then I think we really looked at our business and looked at the expenses and realized the majority of our business is still coming from past clients. And we really needed to spread the love over there a little bit and kind of fine tune what we were doing in the farm and looking at where we could see ourselves really getting business. So we've cut out some of the bigger events and now do an office event with other agents that, you know, that farm their particular areas. And then we'll do smaller things in our farm because the amount of money that was going out, we just weren't getting the return on investment there.
Very good. Okay, so for the pieces you do send out, the ones you find most effective that are your favorite pieces, can you share what those are and how often do they go out?
For us, I mean, it's always different. I mean, in January, we typically do, like everyone else, a year in review of what we've sold. Obviously just listed, just sold, especially if they were, you know, the highest price or, you know, have some great feature to it. You know, we'll always put a blurb in there about, you know, either interest rates or low inventory, like everyone else. There's nothing special about our marketing pieces. We just try to make it stay in their hands a couple extra seconds before it gets to the trash can. The one thing that I think we get the most mileage out of is we do an invitation for our open houses. And it's on a postcard. It's already printed. All we have to do is slap the label on it of where the open house is, time and dates, and we'll, you know, walk through either our farm or around the house that we have the listing. And so our open houses are typically very busy. They're bringing in those cards and they're realizing that we're doing business. So I think that's one of the pieces that we've done that we get the most mileage out of.
Okay.
Yeah, I love the just listed. If we don't have much time to do it, but in escrow and just sold, our personal one. So we only do our personal transactions on the cards.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I see Terry's nodding the same for Terry, right? Because
But as a new agent, you know, and you don't have any business, why wouldn't you, you know, use some of your office sales? You know,
absolutely.
because, you know, everyone has to start somewhere and not everyone has, you know, 40 sales closed last year, or whatever the number is.
Yeah, you can go into Trend Graphics or the MLS, and you can put your office number, ask your manager, and you can map out, these are the sales in, you know, Lake Forest that First Team did in 2022, listing side. Hey, our office sold, you know, 140 listings in Lake Forest, and off you go. It's just a conversation piece. To Terry's point, if you don't have enough business, but you can also go into and say, hey, did you see that listing down the street? Right? It doesn't have to be your listing, and you don't have to print their information. You're just there. Have you thought about selling or something like that?
Have you found, and this is two parts, and Dan, feel free to chime in here. One, are you using QR codes? And if so, where is it tying to? And then are you using things like the AVM model? What's my home worth? I have a buyer. other different sneak preview, or using any other things like that that you find that are super helpful, like a first team type tool or technology to help that you're finding gets the best engagement?
Yeah, and that gets inquiries
Right.
in the farm, and identify the movers.
Pretty much.
So, go ahead, Eric.
Pretty much every flyer we send out or drop off has a QR code on it, and it links to the page on our website that gives you the quick home value for your home. So we are using that pretty much all the time, and then we get, whenever you get that, you see who put their thing in. We get some people that put their home value in like once a month, and we kind of see like, oh, these people are kind of interested. Most of the time we will even possibly follow up on that, drop off like a full made CMA on their house after we've gotten it through that thing. But everything we send does have a QR code that goes to like, what is your home value? That's what we've seen is the biggest thing that people will actually kind of what they want to know.
Eric, when you do get that scan on your QR code with a request for value, do you act on it right away? Do you give them instant reply?
So the first team website will instantly give them the value or whatever, and then within the next day or so, we'll actually drop off a full handmade printed out CMA on their doorstep to kind of say like, our website gave you a number. We kind of want to give you more information. If you're interested, let us know. If you were just kind of looking for a value, we don't want to impose on your life. Mm-hmm. Just to kind of give them that we're here to give you value if you want it.
Great, thank you.
And Eric, is that a drop, or are you knocking with that one?
We're just dropping out there too. We're pretty big on, we don't want to get imposed on people's lives and whatnot. So if they want to call us or talk to us about it, otherwise they can kind of go from there and kind of just have our thing and feel bad about throwing out this 50-page thing that we sent on their control.
So if I lived in your, oh, sorry, go ahead, Kath.
All I was going to say is the other thing that goes with that is anytime we ever get an email address, like anybody's email, they immediately, even if they're just asking for an update or a price for their house, they immediately go in our newsletter. Like now they're starting to hear from us. Now they're going to hear from us every week, right? They're a part of our people. So it's, I don't know, kind of like when you buy something, right? You just want to keep, I don't know, how many times do you look at, I don't know, Disney Store, now that I'm a grandmother. Disney Store sends me things every day. Probably 3 months I ignore it. But one of the times it comes up, when I'm ready to buy something, there they are. And that's what we're trying to be, is just top of mind when it happens.
Very good.
First team, that thing the first team has of getting the value of your home is huge, because everybody wants to know.
And it is nice, the program the first team has is nice because it gives them an answer immediately. So it's not like they're waiting on us to give them something. They get an answer, but then we can follow up with it as quickly as we can. But it's not like they're sitting there waiting, like, we'll be right back. And they're actually getting the answer that they're looking for. And then whatever we give them is kind of icing on the cake.
Yeah, Eric and Kathy, our office has taken dozens of listings just from that single source alone on the AVM model. And just to further what you're saying, I think the two key things to that is instant reply to the consumer and then impeccable follow-up. So we've taken them instantly, and then we've also taken them after like 8 contacts of follow-up, over time. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. And I know you guys mentioned newsletter. Is anybody else doing a newsletter? And if so, where do you get it and how often does it go out?
Well, our newsletter, I make it personally. I make it by hand, and it goes out once a week.
Is it targeted specifically to the farm?
No, it's targeted. It goes to kind of pretty much anyone we have email addresses of. So it's our past clients, our people on our farm, everything. It's kind of just targeted to real estate as a whole.
Very good. And if I lived in your farm, guys, how often would I receive something from you in my mailbox or in via email? And how often would I see you probably in the farm walking or at the door dropping?
Once a month.
We try to keep it 3 weeks.
Yeah, Terry Short and I, because of other things, we just try to keep it simple on ourselves. So on the piece, I love the QR code, excuse me. But we just have our cell phone and we have a reason why we're there. We have a buyer, we have a qualified buyer, whatever. We just keep it simple. But we try to be once a month.
Okay. Very
Our
good.
flyers or whatever go out every 3 weeks, and we try to be at each farm once a month.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Once a month.
Once a
We're
month.
personally actually there dropping things off.
Got it. Are you saying at each door once a month?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. What about a database? Oh, sorry,
Here-
Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So these guys are established farmers. So, they're in a different mode, so to speak, of they are the number one choice of realtor in their farm. They have branding and name recognition. What would they recommend to somebody that doesn't have the traction, the branding you have, the stats that you're the number one choice of realtor? What would you recommend for them?
I think that's a great question, Dan. And I talked this talk for so many years before I did is there's a reason we all work for First Team. There is. Hopefully we were all took our time and looked at all of the companies out there and what they could offer. And when you can't sell yourself, sell something better than you, right? So sell First Team. First Team has great numbers. People see that. So you can just use what First Team gives you, right? Use them, pretend they're you, right? You're a sales. How many times when First Team acquired being in a relationship with Christie's, how many of us that sell higher end went from saying we work for First Team to saying we work for Christie's? Right? All of us did it because it was the name moved us to another level. We'll use the name of First Team. And somebody asked a question about, I saw it on the chat, like what would you recommend for a gated farm if you don't live in the community? And I think that's I don't know that I would do it because it's you're sneaking into it's hard. You can be in the farm if you have a listing in there and use your time in there, but I think I'd stay away from gated communities because they can't see you in the farm. Unless you live there, they can't see it. But going back to what you said, Dan, I would say First Team has so many fabulous stats. Use them. And if you're scared, if you're new and you're scared, I'm going to tell you this because I did this in the beginning. If you're new and you're scared and the stats are beyond you, all of you, every single person in First Team has an excellent manager who knows their stuff. And if you've got a listing that you're so excited about and it's your first one or it's your third one and you don't know what you're doing, grab their hand and take them with you. I don't know one of you guys on here that would say no if somebody said to you, I really need you, will you come with me? We've got, or me, if you said to me, I really need you, come with me, we'd all do it. It's just, you've got it's such a team and the excitement of the team keeps me excited. So use it.
I love your energy.
Yeah, I was going to say, be careful you call Kathy, because if she did 260 doors on a Super Bowl Sunday, I think I've done 90 in a day. I don't think I've done 260. So that's quite an accomplishment. But
you gotta watch out for me, Steve, because my East Coast bluntness scares people sometimes.
I tell you what, it works. I've always respected you. So, Dan, I would say to anybody newer is keep it simple. Keep the budget very modest in what you're spending. Even now, you heard a top agent in Mary and Terry talk about they analyze their business and we're spending all this money. Why are we spending all this money over here? So you don't have to spend a lot of money. You just have to make the personal contact, whether it's a mailer, whether it's social media, whether it's a sphere of influence, you're volunteering, that territory management of people you know. But I think if you're a traditional farm area where you look at a community, just go, drive till your car stops, get out, and I'd pick 3 price points: entry, middle, and upper. And those are what I would, and I would knock on those doors.
I agree with Kathy about using First Team, because as a new agent, you really don't have stats and it's a scary thing. And then also First Team has great marketing pieces that you can just walk and drop in the farm. and at least they're seeing you in there. So it doesn't have to be an expensive thing, or, you know, using your stats. Use First Team, and then also use the marketing pieces that they have.
Yeah, and Mary brings up something too, to kind of piggyback off of that. And Mary probably experiences this when she's outdoor doing doors. The vast majority of people in America are very warm and welcoming. That's our culture. That's our heritage in America. And post-COVID, the population has aged, and there are a tremendous amount of folks that are lonely and isolated. And that personal contact is huge. Right? We talk about the average, I think Cam mentioned a couple of years ago in a rally, the average age of a home in Orange County is 50 years old. So now it's probably like 55 years old. And so if people are original owners or have been there a long time, people go to stores just to interact, you know, so don't lose sight of that when you're going. There's a lot of welcoming people, and keep it simple. However you do it, open houses. I was going to ask Mary and Terry, I know you do open houses. Don't you have a lot of people come in and they're just happy to talk to you and meet you and talk real estate?
100%. So
Yeah. Terry, can you share last weekend what happened?
what was that?
Can you share what happened to your open house just last weekend, I think it was?
So we did an open house last Saturday and Sunday in Anaheim Hills, dropped off invitations. We had 45 groups of people through, and, you know, it was busy. I mean, everybody was chatty, and, you know, it was just nice. We ended up with 6 offers, you know, nothing crazy, nothing, you know, and I have 6 good offers, which is, you know, they're adjusting to the interest rates. What I would say on a farm though, if you're a new agent or haven't farmed in the past and aren't so sure about it, pick a condo farm. You have the highest turnover there. You know, in some of our farms, we might get 2 houses in 2 years, which if I was relying on that, you know, I'd be starving. But if you have a condo farm, it's always too big, too small, the stairs, they don't like the HOA, whatever it is, there's always turnover. And you typically have a lot of chatty Cathys, no offense, Kathy, but you know, there's always somebody there that knows everything that's going on, you know, the problem with the tree or the water or the leaks or whatever. And you're dealing, you know, yes, it's a lower price point, but you might have 15 or 20 turnover in a year consistently. And so as the first time farmer or first time agent out there, even if you don't want to knock on the doors, drop something on their door with your picture every single week for, you know, a couple months. And pretty soon you may have never talked to them, but they know you. You know, they know your face. Yes, you've been around. And then be respectful. You know, if their newspapers are piling up, pick them up, put them on their front doorstep. You know, don't run the other way if you see them open their garage. That's what I tend to do or want to do. And have nice conversations with them. Just don't make it salesy. Just, I'm your neighborhood realtor. I'm just dropping off some information. We just had something sell, list, whatever in your community. And for the most part, they'll talk to you. And then obviously if you can get that email, that's golden.
Nice.
Well, I know we're at 10:01 and I know our panelists are very busy. They've got a lot going on. I wanted to kind of be respectful of that and find out if maybe Dan, I may have one more question. Dan, do you have another question or two you want to throw out to the group?
No, I think it was great.
I have 3 more pages that we're not even going to get to. This is
No,
great.
it was a great discussion. Thank you, Terry, for doing that. I don't know, are there any questions for the rest of the participants here today? I saw the chat line. Are there any in there?
Hi, good morning.
Questions.
Oh,
Oh,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Rick.
So I'm a new agent, and thank you for taking the time on this panel. One of the top producers that mentioned that they're very competitive and they have a smaller farm. My question is, if I'm a new agent and I enter a farm and there's a couple big agents in our office, how do we approach that situation? And also vice versa, if let's say we do end up farming in that agent's territory and we're approached by that agent, how are we to deal with that on the back end?
Is that within the company? Is that what you're saying, Rick?
Correct. So in my neighborhood, I have 2 agents from First Team that form my immediate neighborhood. So I want to form my neighborhood. How do I approach that situation?
Yeah.
So Rick, I'll jump in. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Dan, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to comment, the first thing that comes to mind is see your manager, because that's such a specific question. And you want to, to answer that, I would say with communication and respect, and talk to the manager. Let's bring in the other party and, let's find out, does it make sense to do that? Do they have market share? Could they use the help? If somebody has 5% or 10% market share, well, there's 90% that the co-brokes are getting. And, my suggestion is just communication, respect, and get your manager and the other agent involved. Steve, I'm sorry for barging in.
No, I'm sorry I talked over you, Dan. It's a great answer. That's what I was going to say. Always talk to your manager. But when my partner Terry Short and I joined First Team in 2009, before we would join the Yorba Linda office, I knew many of the agents there, and we told the manager at the time, Pat, please talk to the agents and get their feedback. They weren't going to decide where we landed, but the feedback came back. More signs are better. More First Team signs are better. So that's the attitude that you can have in working with your teammates. Is it's better to have First Team signs, even if you don't get it, than to have a sign from somebody else who's, another company. So that's the first thing I would say. And then secondly would be always, I'm very competitive, but I manage my competition. I've realized I don't go after other people. I just work to attain my goals and help my clients attain their goals. So what I would say is always tread lightly and offer to be of assistance. Hey, can I do an open house? I live here. I can be of assistance. So I think if you don't make it adversarial and competitive, you can make it collegial, where you're working together, it'll be successful for you. Great question, Rick.
I've got one, hopefully this helps, Rick. It's when you're in real estate, each client that you have is very important to you. Yes, and doing the best for your client's important, but I'm going to tell you, the entire ocean of realtors are more important to you. The realtors, your relationship with the other realtors out there is it's actually going to define your career. The way you work with them, the way they feel about you. And I think there's a lot of questions to what you said. I don't know if we can all answer it. You've got to realize what value can you bring to the other agents that are in that farm working for First Team. If you're really a team player, like we all say we are, there's no reason, like nobody's taking over LeBron because LeBron's the best on that team. They're all just helping him. So you've got to realize that, like, what's the reason that you're doing that? And is it important? I'm always more cautious. I will always say no instead of messing with another agent. I'm more respectful because it's important to keep that relationship.
And I think too, Rick, as a new agent, you're licensed for the whole state. My family, we were in Lake Tahoe and I door knocked a street. It was an amazing street. And I door knocked it. I just wanted to door knock these homes. And, they were, I'll never see those people probably again. But the point is, you're licensed for the whole state, work with your management, and then don't just be focused on your area. Do like Terry mentioned, do, entry, that's condos, do the middle and do the upper, wherever you live. And then, like Kathy said, be respectful. It's a big pool, but you're licensed and you gotta earn it for your family, or yourself, whatever your household looks like.
And I also would love to invite Bob Gattuso if you have any questions. You've been on here the whole time, Bob, and just to throw in any last thoughts or questions for the panel.
Let's see here.
I thought it was a very good discussion. I think the most important point, one of the most important things I heard for new agents, you have to use the company stats. That's the only way, when I first started, I didn't have any stats. And so I was using Mark Kojak, the office stats, the company stats to get my point across. And I heard some things like some people got their listings early in their farm. Some people, it took me 2 years because I was farming incorrectly. So you can get listings in your farm correctly quicker if you farm correctly. And just sending out, I don't know, just sending out brochures or flyers or whatever, I don't think it's enough. I think you have to, somebody, I think Dan or somebody said, or Terry, know you, like you, trust you, and they can't know you, like you, trust you from a postcard. You have to go meet them. And it wasn't until I met people in my farm that I started making connections that it really starts to happen. So.
Can I ask
Yeah.
a question?
Go for it.
Hi, this is
Good morning.
Kimberly. I'm down here in San Diego. And I started farming. I've been taking Bob's class the middle of December. I knock on 50 doors a day, 3 to 4 days a week. And I've had really good success. I found I have 6 leads, but they're all the same thing. Someone passed away in the house and there's no other family members close by. And I'm trying to figure out who I need to talk to get to list the house. And have you guys come across that, and how have you handled it? And how have you found it?
Absolutely. Good morning. All the time, I'll jump in and the others can jump in. Your title rep can sometimes get you the family members' names and contact information. Sometimes you can just go online and Google it, but I would start with my title rep to get that information. And then I would mail to the house and see if it comes back to me, or if it doesn't. And I would leave a package at the front door. It could be a personal note or something fancier, just right there at the door, under the doormat. So if I drive by and I see it, so I just went through this. A lady who I used to check on, she just disappeared for months, and I was heartbroken. I would check on her and talk to her. I could not find her family, but somebody was taking the notes. And so anyhow, eventually I got a phone call, but the point is that that's the best way to do it. So online, your title rep, and then mailing to the home, and then leaving something at the door that somebody will pick up.
Thank you. Were you
Yeah.
mailing like, I'm sorry, your family member passed away sort of thing? Or are you writing letters?
So that's a great question. So it's hard when you know, right? So here's what I would tell you. First thing I would do is I would go to the neighbors. Hey, I was out door knocking and I noticed the home is vacant. Is there anything you can do to help me? I'd like to help them offer my services, period. And then they'll tell you or not. So I had this happen on another area that I door knocked. The neighbor went, oh, by the way, that lady hasn't been there in a while. She moved in with her kids, but the house is just sitting vacant and they haven't mowed the lawn. And I'm like, hey, you have a phone number? I'll call them and have my gardener come over, something like that. So the neighbors know. I think it was Terry, who said there's a neighbor that'll tell you everything about the neighborhood, right? So you want to find that neighbor and be respectful and be confidential. And then you could write a note and say, I'm Steve, hi, I'm Steve, and I'm a realtor in the area, and I noticed the home is vacant. Is there anything I can do to help you? Do you need a property profile or any recorded documents that are public? I can get them for you for free. Please don't pay for them. We'll get them. It's our personal service to you.
I like that.
Excellent.
So I hope that helps.
And before we go any other questions, I just want to do 2 really quick plugs if I can,
Yeah.
Greg. One is for Bob and anything coming up with your farming class, but also we have Jared here from Western Resources. And I just wanted, Jared, if you could quickly share some of the specific farming tools and support you guys offer all of our agents. Because if you're not connecting with your Western rep, you're missing out.
Hey, he looks nicer than he does on Zoom. There is a smile. Go,
Yeah.
Jerry, go.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Yeah, we have great tools. When I started, we used to use Thomas guides, and it would take quite some time to figure out what's a good area to farm. But now we have great tools. We have our Walking Farm app that's free to you, as well as Title Pro 247 and Title Toolbox. What's great about those tools is you can actually do boundary searches instantaneously, get counts and turnovers within seconds. So reach out to your title rep, whoever that may be. I did want to mention to, I think it was Kimberly, I use, when I'm looking for people that, you know, if you're saying that everyone's passed in the home and there's no one left there, is I'll use a website called My Family Tree. And I will put in the homeowners. And then from there is possible relatives, and you can link straight to those. And a lot of times there's phone numbers available and sometimes emails. So align yourself with the title rep in your office, and they will be happy to help you with that. Also what I'd be doing is if I was a realtor, because I've been doing this 20 plus years now, if I got my license, I'd be target marketing. Obviously, the agents in here, past clients, sphere of influence, that's a huge one. But just to give you a couple of nuggets, you know, last year in 2022, 54% of all sales transactions that closed were people that were 55 and over. We can do a demographic search for you to find those folks. There is a fee, but it's 6 cents a record. Super cheap, well worth it. And also, someone else talked about affidavits. You can search affidavits on Title Toolbox, and 20% of the time they list. So I would definitely be target marketing within my own geographical farm, or going after entire zip codes and cities. So reach out to your rep, and thank you guys.
Excellent, Jared. Thanks.
That is outstanding. Hey, Terry, we had a couple in the chat that we just want to make sure we get to.
Sure.
That.
So I'll let you run it from here, Greg.
All right. Absentee owners. How do you handle the absentee owners in your farm?
We do send letters. When we have a listing, we send letters to the absentee owners, just letting them know that this is what we have, and if they're interested in selling these, what the values are.
Okay. Anyone else? Do you do anything different than what you do regularly with the absentee owners?
We
do a
actually
1030. Oh, go ahead, Kathy.
somebody's looking for something in the neighborhood and their house matches it, we let them know that we've got a hot buyer, you know, that could be interested in the property. Would they consider selling it or something like that? Just kind of giving them something to excite them on what's possible.
We do a 1031 tax deferred exchange postcard for those that are have rentals or investment property. So we target that, and you know, Jared Rao, who is on, he's our title rep in our Yorba Linda office, and he does a great job. He's got a great experience and resource, and that's how you want to align up. I think that's what you're getting at, Greg, is, you know, you can get these from the title company, and even your title rep, if your manager isn't available, they can get you this, what to put on there and send out. It's pretty easy.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Steve. And the next question is email. The email component to the farming, you know, how do you handle the email side of things? Is there something that you do and drip on them?
Any emails we get go into our weekly update, our newsletter that goes out. We don't want to overwhelm people. We just kind of like what Mom was saying earlier, we kind of just want to continuously be in front of people so that when the time comes that they actually want to listen to us, we're in their email inbox again.
Okay.
So I want the cell phone before the email. So by the way, Greg, who's on the phone, is a great resource. I'm going to overwhelm you, Greg. Everybody should call Greg and get it. He's unbelievable. I call him often. I love this guy. But what I would say is the cell phone's the best for me, because part of my territory management is I'm going to text 10 to 25 people every time I take a listing. I'm personally going to text them, hey, I have this one coming soon, or registered status, or putting on the market. So I love cell phone first.
Outstanding. Thank you for that. All right, Terry, I know that right now, is there any other questions? I know that right now I just want to get to a few. It's 10:15. I want to be respectful of time.
Hey, Greg,
yes.
There was a question I saw fly by about budget, and I kind of want to touch on that.
Okay.
We have some amazing top agents in our company, and there's amazing top agents in other companies. And I think it's really important that you don't overspend yourself. When I worked for Procter & Gamble, their ad budget was 10% at that time. This is 100 years ago when I worked for them. So, you know, you can have a simple formula like that. If I'm going to make $100,000 this year, I'm not going to spend more than $10,000. And because you need to keep the money. The only two entities that I know of that have made it in volume, right? All the discount agents, they're all gone. Like, you know, the different companies, different brokerages, what I'm talking about. But Walmart and Amazon, those are the only two that make it in volume. And you can't compete with those folks. So keep your budget simple, manageable, and keep your money. Because when the lean times come, no economist is going to prepare you for that. So you need to have money to sustain you. When Terry mentioned in one of her farms, she may only have 1 or 2 in 1 or 2 years that turn over. You have to be able to sustain that amount of time.
All right. Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate that. Lawrence, you had your hand raised, and I know that we need to get going. Lawrence.
Hey, Lawrence, I'm married with children.
Buddy,
And
how
my
you doing?
kids are
Thank you so much. This is really great info. Real quick question. I love the AVM page with QR codes all over the place, direct people to them. Really interesting results. The question I have is it's changing. It's changed to the point where you need to put in an email address to get your AVM. How do you guys feel about that? Do you think that's a barrier to entry, or you think that's worth the price of admission?
I've always heard with that type of stuff is the more you're asking people to input, the less you're going to get, but the more quality of leads you are going to get. So, I mean, I do think that it probably is a barrier to entry. So there is a thought that you could try to make a form of your own to send it to something. If you really didn't want them to have to put in their email address, but if they're not willing to put in their email address and they're really not looking for anything that you're actually going to be able to provide them, I mean, I guess they just want a number to some degree. Making a barrier to entry will make them have to be more quality of leads.
Interesting. Thank you, Eric. That's great.
Yeah.
Interesting.
In the last question, we'll close out with this one, and then we'll talk about next week's training, because we got Bob Gattuso going to touch on how to farm expired. So that's going to be fantastic next week. But, how do you handle getting phone numbers from everybody in your farm? Do you do it over time? Do you have a type of service, that you do? Do you pay for the phone numbers? How do you get everybody's phone number in the farm?
I'm all about organic.
Okay.
It's gotta be organic. They've gotta want some, if you give them a reason, if you give them value, they're gonna give it to you because they know that you're not gonna overstep your bounds. So I don't know if that's the answer you wanted, but that's the way we do it.
So if I talk to Kathy at the front door before I leave, I'm going to offer her, hey, would you like me to follow up with you? Is it okay to call you or text you? And then she says, well, why? And then I'll answer that question. And then so cell phone and then email, but I have it in my head. I don't want to leave unless I get cell phone or email or both. I think Eric said really good point. The more you get, the more committed they are maybe to interacting with you, right?
Hey, Steve. Sorry,
yes, sir.
if I could, I think the second part of what you had said there is really important is, you're trying to get the email and they ask why. What is your reason why? Because I think the compelling part for many people is I don't know what to say to get to convert.
So there's a free service in the CRMLS, and I usually just go with, how would you like me to set up the MLS, the multiple listing service, to email you every time there's coming soon, a listed, pending, closed sale, right here, right around you. It's free. I'm not going to track it. Nobody's going to track it. You can opt out if you want. And I got to tell you, I love that because there are so many, it's free. And I have so many clients that have called and said, oh, hey, you just sent me this one. Do you think our home is worth that much? I have no idea what they're talking about. I have to go in and look because I don't track it. I promised them I wouldn't track it. And now, could I track it? Yes. And but that's why I'm there to offer information and then to follow up. And then to the lady in San Diego, let's say it was she went to the door and somebody passed away and there's a surviving spouse. I'm a very empathetic, compassionate person, and I follow up with about 24 widows and widowers in my area. Every time there's an earthquake, there's a wind event, there's major rain, I'll offer to go out and check their water heater, check for leaks, just help them. Whatever I can do. So I think that's another one. Hey, can I follow up with you and check on you just to make sure you're okay? So I'm the neighbor first, as Kathy said. There's no sales pitch, just being a good neighbor.
All right.
I think to kind of agree with that, I think one of the biggest things is it's not always about selling. I mean, a lot of the time we get relationships with people is because we're actually there to help people. We're actually there to provide value. And eventually, if you're the person that's providing value, you're obviously the person that they're going to look to when they want to sell. But not every single conversation we have with people is about selling. If we see people on a farm, we're not going to be always asking if they want to sell. Sometimes we're just going to ask about their lives or whatever it may be. Because I think if you're too incredibly sales focused, people see right through that.
Yeah. And then Bob, good too. So you had a comment, and let's lead into next week's training too as well, what you're going to be teaching.
I did have a comment. I'm not sure if you have time, but is anybody here doing video text messages for your absentee owners, video messages to your absentee owners? I'm finding it's a really effective way to get their interest. I have an example of one if you'd like to see it. Up to you guys.
Bob, good morning. It's Steve Vartanian. I always love your ideas, and I think video is great. What I've transitioned to are audio messages, where I'll go and record a message rather than calling the person. Let's say Kimberly from San Diego, I think, said this. If I'm following up with a family, I will send an audio message. Hey, this is Steve, and I'm just checking in to see how everything's going. And it goes out as a text message. But I like the video too.
I totally get it. The problem that Kimberly had, as I have in our farm, is that it's predominantly over 55. And when they pass away, they know me. They come to my open house, they get my mailings, but when they pass away, how do you get to the heirs? And that's always been a problem with me. Also, how do you get to the absentee owners? Let me show you, Greg, can I show this?
Yes, go ahead.
Video of what we're doing, and it's been extremely effective. You either can send it if you have their information, or you can mail it to them with the QR code and they'll get to it. But it's been very effective. Let me share my screen. This is somebody that was in our class last year. And I thought it was a really good video. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, let's play it.
Hey Jeff, Sherry Palmieri here at First Team Real Estate. I hope you're having a great day. I know you're probably really busy, so I'm going to just cut to the chase. Jeff, I want to sell your property here at Fort Kempton Lane in Ladera Ranch. I know you live out of state and you may not realize this, but right now there's a shortage of inventory in this area. My team and I have dozens of buyers who want to buy properties just like yours in this area. So literally, I have been walking through the neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking homeowners if they want to sell their properties. So Jeff, let me sell your property at the highest price possible. Give me a call and let's get the ball rolling. You're going to love my team and I. We are relentless when it comes to selling homes. So Jeff, I can't wait to sell your home.
So things like that are really good. She's standing out in front of the neighborhood. She's walking the neighborhood. She's knocking on doors. I have buyers. The only thing that I would have changed, added is, because it's an absentee owner, they're investors. Would you like to sell, trade, or buy or exchange your property? That tells them that you know about exchanging things. But it was a really, this has been very effective. We send it either to their, text it to them, or we send it to them with the QR code and we can measure the response. As far as next week, I am, gosh, I've been here 20 years, but I'm feeling that we're going into a cycle that we did a while back. And I think expired listings are going to be, I already looked at, there's going to be about 400 expired listings in the next 90 days. So what we're going to talk about next week is what to say, how to find them, and how to work with the expired listing people.
Outstanding. Bob, we all look forward to your class next week, your training. You do a fantastic job. Terry, Dan, thank you so much for helping putting this on to as well. And to our fearless leader, Michelle, thank you for helping also make this happen. You know, we really appreciate you. Mary, Kathy, Terry, Eric, Steve, you know, you guys you're awesome. You know, we really appreciate, all of you and being part of First Team Real Estate, and part of today. Thank you, everybody, for being part of First Team Real Estate, being part of today. This will be recorded on the video library in First Place, and we will add the territory management kit as well. All right, we're going to see Bob next week and hope to see all of you then too. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Mary, Kathy, Terry, Stephen, Eric, and Dan. All right,
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Where's Steve?